I always knew there was something slightly different about me, but I just didn't realize how different until I made an appointment with my doctor to have a general checkup and ask him some questions. I was surprised to see a young female doctor sitting there. I'd been seeing the same doctor my whole life, and I really wasn't expecting someone else to be in his place. Anyway, this actually worked out pretty well because she spilled the beans on what was really going on with my health. Rosie, I see here that last year you underwent quite a serious surgical procedure. How are you feeling now? She asked, smiling kindly at me. Well, I don't think the surgery worked, I told her. I mean, look at me. I still don't have breasts or my period. The doctor shifted in her seat and adjusted her glasses. She looked a bit shocked. Hang on, maybe I'm looking at the wrong file. Sorry, it says here you had a gonadectomy and that it was successful. They removed your testes. I didn't hear anything she said after that. My head was spinning. Testes? What did she mean? And then it came back to me. I had heard that word before, the one beginning with G, gonadectomy. When I was a kid, my dad always spoke about it and how I would have it when I was older. I'd been too young to understand, and I thought it was something to do with puberty. Quickly, the doctor realized what she'd done and apologized. Then she printed my files out and suggested I go home and speak to my parents about it. And if there was any more I wanted to discuss, I could make an appointment with her at any time. On my way home, I clutched the files tightly to my chest. I needed to speak to my parents. They'd lied to me. How could they have done this to me? It all started last year when I turned 12. All of my friends had started to get their periods, and almost all of them were wearing bras. One day I plucked up the courage to ask my mom if she could buy me a bra, even though I was flat as a pancake, and she just laughed at me. Why would you need a bra? Don't be silly. Then she just changed the subject. But everyone was wearing one. It wasn't fair. I eventually went out and bought one myself and stuffed it with socks. But I was too shy to wear it to school. I just wanted to see what I'd look like with breasts. It was something I thought about all the time. Everyone around me was changing and growing, and I felt left behind. But that all changed one day when I noticed a few dark hairs growing above my lip. I was mortified and immediately plucked them out with my mom's tweezers. But the very next week, they'd grown back. I knew my mom used hair remover on her legs, so I asked if I could borrow some for my lip area. When I asked Mom this, she was busy cooking, and she almost dropped the pan of food she was carrying. I didn't understand why she was so freaked out. It was just hair. But she told me that no, I could not use her hair removal cream. And for the rest of the night, I could hear her and my dad talking in hushed whispers. Well, I wasn't going to school with a mustache, so I did the next best thing. I shaved it off with Dad's razor. I didn't need to worry about school though, because when I woke up the next day, Mom told me that we were going to see the doctor. I had no idea why. I didn't have a fever. I didn't have a stomach ache. I felt fine. But she dragged me along anyway, and her and the doctor spoke about stuff I didn't understand. Afterwards, Mom told me I would be able to get a bra soon, and that if I was lucky, my period might even make an appearance. So the next week, when she said we were going to the hospital for me to have surgery, I didn't even complain. I figured this was normal, and this was how girls became women. They had a simple surgery, and suddenly their breasts grew and their periods came. I was actually quite excited because I wouldn't need to hide my flat chest under baggy t-shirts. I don't remember the surgery at all. They gave me an anesthetic, and when I woke up, I actually looked down at my chest to check, as if I had expected them to just appear, but I was still flat. And there was this weird pain below my stomach, like a dull, achy feeling. I told the doctor I felt empty, and he laughed. "You are," he said. I didn't get it. They let me go home the next day, but I wasn't allowed to go back to school for 3 weeks because I had to heal. The whole time, I just felt numb and sad. When I eventually went back, everyone kept asking where I'd been or if I was sick. One of the boys in my class came up to me and made a horrible joke. He said, "We heard a rumor that you were getting plastic surgery for your flat chest, but look at you. Clearly not." Then he laughed and walked away. Hot tears filled my eyes. Why would he be so nasty to me? I waited and waited, but nothing in my body changed. The only thing that felt different were my moods. I was quiet and moody, and I didn't feel like myself. Ever since the surgery, something didn't feel right. I didn't think anyone would understand how I felt, so I just kept quiet. One afternoon, I got home from school early, and my mom and dad had both just arrived home from work. They were talking in the lounge and they mustn't have heard me opening the door. I froze when I realized they were talking about me. We have to tell her. The surgery obviously didn't work. And I know she's been using my razor for that mustache of hers, my dad yelled. They were fighting, and it was about me. I could barely look at Mom as we ate dinner that night. Dad had gone out, and I had fallen asleep before he even came home. I should have just asked Mom what Dad had meant, but I was too scared. I hate hearing them arguing like that. So the next day, I went to see the doctor. It was a Saturday, and I told my mom I was going for a walk to the park. But then I turned in the opposite direction. That was the moment I found out my parents had lied to me. I had been born with both male and female parts inside me, and my parents had decided that they wanted me to be a girl, so that's why I'd had the surgery, to remove my male parts. I couldn't believe it. I was a freak. I didn't understand what this meant. Was I a boy or a girl? The doctor had said I'd had both parts, so what was I now? Why did my body do this to me? Before I'd left the doctor's clinic, I had asked the doctor one last question. Why would my parents have done this? I'll never forget what she said. Rosie, if you'd been born with two noses, you'd want one of them removed, right? No one wants to walk around with two noses. Well, it's kind of the same thing. You can't be both male and female. But I was both male and female, I thought. On my way home, I stopped to look at the files. All the information was there. I had the XY chromosome, which meant I was male. But I wasn't male. I was female. Or was I? I didn't know anymore. I didn't know anything. I walked home and thought about running away. But where would I go? I was a 13-year-old girl. Wait, no, I wasn't even a girl. I was a 13-year-old person with nowhere to go. My parents were both at home when I got back. They were eating lunch and acting all lovey-dovey again. I walked in and my mom pulled out the seat next to her and smiled at me. She smiled as if everything was okay, when in fact nothing was okay, and it would never be okay again. I just stared at her and said, "How could you? You lied to me. Both of you. You're liars." My mom saw the files I was holding and tried to reach out to get them, but I ripped my hand away from her and stepped away. She wasn't taking anything more from me. My dad jumped out of his chair and in an angry, booming voice said to me, "We did it for your own good. We just wanted to fix you and make you normal. You should thank us." Well, that did it. I started shouting at him, telling him this was my body and they'd kept this huge secret from me my whole life. I said I didn't need to be fixed. I needed to be exactly who I was meant to be. And if that was a boy, then that's what I was. But my dad wouldn't accept it. He told me I was Rosie. I was a girl and no daughter of his was going to be seen as a freak. So he thought I was a freak. Can you imagine what it's like being told you're a freak by your own dad? I ran to my room in a flood of tears. My body didn't feel like it belonged to me. I couldn't believe my parents had done this. All they cared about was themselves. What about what I wanted? What if I had chosen to be a boy instead of a girl? Was that why I didn't have breasts? Because I was meant to be a boy? I couldn't believe I still cared about something like breasts in a moment like that. I lay on my bed, shaking and crying, wondering who I was and where I could go from here. The reality was, I couldn't do anything. The damage had already been done. My male parts were gone, and my female parts didn't work. I was nobody. I started doing research and found out the name of what I was, an intersexual. And then it felt like I'd found a treasure chest. There were other people just like me. I wasn't the only one. I found a whole community of people who were born with the same thing. And I started talking to them on the forum, and suddenly I didn't feel like such a freak. Every night after school, I'd talk to my intersexual friends online and ignore my parents. And pretty soon I found out more and more information. I was devastated to find out I'd never be able to have kids. But I was also relieved to know that there was a reason why I'd always felt different. Because I was different. As I got a bit older, I'm 17 now, I realized that I had to forgive my parents. In a way, I actually just felt sorry for them because they'd been so embarrassed when they found out they were giving birth to a baby who wasn't male or female, that they'd hidden this secret away for years. And of course, it had come back and bitten them in the back. For years, I hated myself. I constantly blamed myself for being born this way. But it's just one of those things that happens, and it's not the end of the world. Now I've decided I want to help other intersexual kids so that they don't need to go through what I went through. Being intersexual isn't something that needs to be corrected or fixed. It's something that needs to be accepted, and I'm going to fight for that.
Hi, I'm Apple, and I just started working as a secretary at a big company. I was thinking about how great this job was compared to my old babysitting job. Gosh, I didn't miss changing all those stinky diapers. One time, I was emptying that family's trash, and the bag burst open, and the diapers full of poop went everywhere. It was so disgusting. And that's when the idea came to me. Why did people not reuse diapers? What if there was a diaper delivery service? You could order clean diapers, someone would come pick up the dirty ones, and you'd never have to deal with cleaning them yourself. Genius. And imagine if there was an app for it. It was a brilliant idea. So I sat and wrote a whole business proposal for it and called it Diaper Daddy. I told my boss about it the next day, and you won't believe what he said to me. Kaylee, did I ask you for your ideas? No, I didn't. You've been hired specifically to do whatever I ask of you, and right now, I'm asking you not to pretend that you have a brain for marketing, because you don't. Got it? I thought he'd at least think it was a good idea. The next day, I saw the CEO and my boss having a meeting in the glass meeting room next to my desk. On the projector was my proposal. I couldn't believe it. It was my idea. He'd stolen my Diaper Daddy app idea. The whole time he was presenting, he kept looking at the CEO and smiling. It was sickening to watch. He was such a suck-up, and the CEO loved everything about the idea. After the meeting, he emailed him straight away and offered him a $10 million deal if he could create the app and get it up and running within a month. I sat there flabbergasted. That $10 million deal should have been mine. I knew my boss probably assumed I'd freak out and ask him why he'd taken my idea, but I decided to do something else instead. Something he wouldn't be expecting. The next day, the CEO had arranged for an app development team to come in and talk about the diaper deal. I told my boss the meeting was scheduled for 1:30 p.m., when actually it was scheduled for 1 p.m. It was one of our colleagues' birthdays that day, and I'd brought in 2 giant helium-filled balloons. 5 minutes before the meeting, I decided it'd be fun if we inhaled some of the helium. I knew my boss was always up for a laugh, so I gave him some too. After he'd inhaled it all, I saw the look of horror cross his face when he noticed the app team arriving. Oops, my bad, I said. The meeting is actually now. In the meeting, my boss stood up to introduce his idea, and as he spoke, his voice came out all high-pitched and squeaky like Mickey Mouse. The CEO looked horrified, and the whole app team burst out laughing. Then he whispered in my ear, begging me to explain the idea, but then I said, "What idea are you talking about?" Even though my boss was embarrassed, he couldn't control his laughter. Even when he tried to stop, I sat there almost peeing myself with laughter at how brilliant this was. Afterwards, my boss came marching out of the meeting room and went straight to me and screamed, "You're fired." He said he'd never been so humiliated in all his life and that I was to leave the building right now. I told my boss, "You'll regret this," and threw whatever was on my desk into a box I found on the side and headed home. First, he'd stolen my idea, and now he'd fired me? What a horrible man. I took my stuff out of the box and saw something I recognized straight away. It was my boss's phone. But what was it doing in this box? I must have put it there by accident when I swiped the desk clean. Of course, like every secretary out there, I knew my boss's passwords. I glanced over my shoulder almost as if I thought my boss would suddenly appear. I slid the screen up and almost peed my pants for the second time that day. His screensaver was a My Little Pony photo. Maybe his daughter did that, I thought. But then I reminded myself he didn't have a daughter. I clicked onto the gallery to see what other photos he had, and just as I did, the phone started to vibrate. Someone was calling. It was his mom, and she was named Mommy Dearest. I almost choked. This was too good. I answered but didn't say anything. "Where is my sweet potato? Hello? Are you deaf? It's after 6 p.m. now. Hurry home or you'll be sent to bed without dessert." I had to hang up quickly for fear that she'd hear me laughing. Who was my boss? All of a sudden, he felt like a complete stranger to me. I mean, he's like 50 and lives with his mom. I started flicking through his messages and started reading his conversations with his mom. "Mom, your room stinks and your bubble bath is ready. If you don't come home now, I'll tell your papa about your pony order that just arrived. Also, I told you to stop buying these damn toys. You're a big boy now." Me, "Never again, Mama, I promise." So weird. What a loser he was. And then I saw something absolutely unbelievable. In his gallery, there was a whole album of photos called Me and My Soulmate. I didn't even know he had a girlfriend. I tried to open the album, but it was locked. Damn. The next day, I woke up early and went to work. Sure, I'd been fired, but that wasn't going to stop me. I walked into the office and everyone stared in shock. "Yeah, Kaylee's back, folks. Stare all you like," I thought. My boss looked up and asked me, "What on earth do you think you're doing here?" Instead of responding, I just flashed his phone, winked at him, and took my old seat. Once everyone had calmed down, I turned to him and said, "Hey pony boy, I'd like a latte with almond milk please and a blueberry muffin." And then I watched as his face turned beetroot red. This was priceless. He ignored me, so I spoke up again. "Hey, pony boy, I'm talking to you. Get me a latte now. Or would you rather I gave Mommy Dearest a call, 5 minutes later, there was a latte in my hands and a delicious blueberry muffin. Wow, is this what it felt like to be the boss? I was taking a sip when he came right up to me and whispered into my ear for me to give him the phone right now, or he'd report me. I almost spat out my latte. Report me to who exactly? I just gave him a smirk and turned back to my laptop. After an hour, I decided I needed to flex my muscles a bit more. I told him we're swapping desks, and then when he didn't react, I just started moving my stuff to his desk. He tried to object, so at the top of my voice, I said, "Sweet potato, I'm warning you." And suddenly, he started moving things off his desk at lightning speed. This was amazing. "Call me boss," I told him. And then at lunchtime, I asked him to go buy me lunch. I ordered 10 pizzas, a dozen donuts, and made him go collect it all and bring it to my desk. Watching him scurry along like my little slave was such a great moment. He was my secretary now. I was officially Boss Kaylee. He tried so hard to get his phone back, even offering me the $10 million deal that was rightfully due. But I wasn't done having fun. I watched over the next few days as he started panicking about getting the app up and running. Every time he had a meeting with the CEO, I'd schedule a delivery from Amazon to be delivered to the meeting room. I could see the CEO getting annoyed, and on the 4th day of this happening, he asked him to open the package. I think he thought it would be something for the app, but when my boss pulled out a pink, sparkly My Little Pony, I literally almost died laughing. I could hear my boss mumbling something about how it was a gift for his niece. Ha! Yeah, right. By the end of the week, I was really having fun being his boss. I even made him order fresh flowers for my desk every day. Throughout the whole week, I tried every password imaginable, but I still couldn't access the locked album. And then I realized it was tied to his Google account, and I could just click Forgot Password and be asked a security question. Of course, the question would be, what is your favorite character? So I asked him, so which pony is the best pony in your opinion? And then he just told me. I could barely contain my excitement. Princess Twilight Sparkle. I typed it in, changed his password, and then I was in. I couldn't believe my eyes. There were hundreds of photoshopped photos. All of them were of my boss and our CEO. In one photo, they were riding atop a My Little Pony, flying through rainbows and clouds. And then there were photos of them at the beach and on a mountain, all with My Little Ponies. And all photoshopped, of course. Oh my gosh, I was stunned. So my boss was in love with our CEO? No way. I didn't even realize how much I was laughing. But my boss asked me what was so funny, and then he realized, and he lunged for his phone. But I quickly pulled it away. "I know your secret," I said, grinning. Literally within the blink of an eye, he'd packed up all his stuff and left. He didn't look embarrassed as he left the office. He actually looked hurt, and I swear I saw him crying as he walked out. This whole time, I'd wanted to be the boss, and yet now, I suddenly felt bad. I used his phone to track down his address and then jumped in a taxi. In the taxi, I started reading some of the messages between him and the CEO, and it was clear they liked each other. When I got to his house, his mom let me in, and I found him curled up on his bed crying like a little kid. Wow, he was really upset about all of this. When he saw me, he told me to go away, but I went over to him, and when I sat down, he started crying even more, saying for years he's been in love with the CEO, but what's the point? It's not like he would ever love him back. Suddenly, I found myself saying, I'm sure the CEO liked him too, and that I'd seen the way he looked at him. There was definitely love in his eyes. I apologized to him for everything I'd done, and he said it didn't matter, that nothing mattered if he couldn't be with the CEO. Just before I left, I texted the CEO from his phone, asking him to meet for a drink to celebrate the deal, and then I put his phone next to his bed and said goodbye. I waited outside the bar for a whole hour until I saw them meeting.